Hello everyone, I'm Brian. Today I'm reacting to Vast Mirror of Consciousness, Swami Sarvapriyananda. So this is a pretty long one. It's going to be cut into maybe 3 to 4 parts. I don't know, depending on how much I talk. Hopefully I don't talk too much. But anyways, I saw this, thought we'd get right into quite a long one. And I'm kind of curious. Vast Mirror of Consciousness. That's essentially us. Those, and it just made me think of a science experiment that they had going on with animals. Because I was about to say, vast mirror of consciousness. And I was thinking, those of us who are conscious think about this. The reason why I say that is because, obviously, I have trouble phrasing this, but everything is consciousness, including animals. Animals have consciousness. Animals are not excluded from consciousness. So our ability to think the way we do as humans compared to certain other animals is vastly different. We are the experiment I was thinking of was self-aware. When we look in the mirror, we are able to tell that is us and not a different animal. There are very few animals who can do this. Babies, or not babies, children. I don't remember what age. I think also sometimes struggle with this. It's probably like age 1, 2, or 3, somewhere around there. And then at a certain point, they recognize the mirror as themselves. Anyways, I was thinking, and my explanation for all that is just because I was thinking this is the vast mirror of consciousness is mostly talking about us because we can be self-aware, we can be aware of it. I don't believe animals can. And then it reminded me of that experiment that consciousness is not the right word I'm trying to portray here. But anyways, too much talking. Let's go ahead and get started.
Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real, lead us from darkness unto light, lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. Good morning and namaste.
Good morning.
Good to be back and good to see so many brave souls on this rather cold New York morning. I saw in the news in the morning, the Google News, it said, New York frozen. So this morning, you can see the very poetic title of the talk, The Vast Mirror of Consciousness, is actually a translation from the Sanskrit, which we will read today. What I have for us this morning is a reading from a little known text, actually, which is based on a very well known text. This is this book, the Yoga Vasishta Sara. Let me tell you a little bit about it before we plunge into it. So I was introduced to it by a wonderful old monk. He had presented this to me, actually, Swami Shiva Vratananda. We knew him as Kalipada Maharaj. I saw him in his old age in Belur Mutt. He had spent many, many years in our center in Mumbai, and then he was, in the last years, he was in Belur Mutt. Now, he was unique. Those who, if you ask any of the monks of the Ramakrishna order, especially the senior ones, they'll all tell you that he was unique in this sense. He was a strict non-dualist, strict Advaitin. You might say, but so are you, Swami? I am not, actually. I am much more run-of-the-mill. You might think not, but if you see our monks of our order, we have this harmonious blend of work and devotion and the path of inquiry, Advaita, and meditation. the four yogas: Raja Yoga, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Jnana Yoga. And each has its own blend of it. And that happens. If you pursue the spiritual path long enough, you will have something that suits you, something that is natural to you. And that happens over time. And this Swami was very distinctly non-dualist, at least the way he spoke and taught others. And so anybody who would go to him, he would be very interested. He would be very happy to know if you were interested in non-dualism, in Advaita Vedanta. And this would be one of the books he would present you with. It's in Bengali. It's a translation from the Sanskrit original. It's called Yoga Vashishta Sara, literally the essence of Yoga Vashishta. And he presented this to me, actually, this particular book. It's in tatters now. It says, so to Swami Sarva Priyananda with love and best wishes, Swami Shiva Vratananda. This was in 2004, 20 years ago. He was not only very interested in non-dualism, but also he wanted it to be spread. When he heard that I'm going to be posted to the United States, I'm going to be sent to the United States, my first posting was in our Vedanta Society of Southern California in Hollywood. So the only thing he said to me was, tell them about non-dualism. Bhalo kore Advaita bolbe, do a thorough job of it. I said, I'll try, Swami. And over the years, I barely spoke to him a few times on the telephone, very few times, maybe 3 or 4 times. And each time he said, he was a man of few words, he said, I've heard you're doing a good job of teaching non-dualism. I am glad. He passed away a couple of years ago. I always wanted to, in sort of as a tribute to him, and because I like this book so much, I wanted to do something on this book. But the problem was there wasn't an English translation of this text available. Now there is. A few years ago, Swami Sarva Devanandaji made this beautiful translation of this text. It's called The Nectar of Supreme Knowledge. And you can get it from Vedanta Press in Hollywood. I think we'll also try to get a few copies here eventually. So, Nectar of Supreme Knowledge. This is a translation by Swami Sarva Devananda. And of course, it's available in India also. It's published from the Ramakrishna Mutt in Chennai, in India. Yes, Ramakrishna Mutt in Chennai. This book has copious notes on it. See, this book was, the Bengali book was translated and published by Swami Dhireshananda, another monk with strong non-dualist predilections in our order. This was a little before my time, so I didn't get to see him actually. He was in our Kankal Haridwar Center for many, many years and decades. And he's the author of this book. What he has done is, the original verses are there, just over 200 verses, and then he has given copious notes with lots of observations and insights into Advaita Vedanta. It's a very good way. The reason why Swami, our Kalipada Maharaj, used to present this book to people who are interested in Advaita was that you not only read these verses, there are many such books, but also the amount of information packed into it in the form of small notes given by Swami Dhireshananda. So that made it valuable. And so you get all the translation of the original verses and the notes in English in this translation. All right. So what is this text? It's actually based on a much more well-known and famous and much, much larger book, the Yoga Vashishta. The Yoga Vashishta is a very ancient text, probably predates classical Advaita Vedanta, predates Shankara and others. The setting is interesting. It's a story of Rama. Oh, the Rama temple is being inaugurated very soon, so it's very contextual. The story of Rama, the prince of Ayodhya, and his father, the king of Ayodhya, Dasharatha. Now the young prince was always very spiritual, had a bit of a premature renunciation. He decided to give up the world and become a monk. And he said, I don't want the kingdom, I don't want to be a king. I want to realize Brahman, I want to become enlightened. So I'm off to the mountains or forests or whatever.
Premature. Does he come back then, I guess?
And Dasharatha, um, he was the king. He was worried what's going to happen if the crown prince goes away. Eventually, those who know the story of Ramayana, he had to go away. And Dasharatha was the one who sent him away. But that's how life is. But initially, he was very worried, and he asked the great sage Vashishta, that why don't you talk to the young prince, make him see sense? And Vashishta goes to Rama and says, you want to become enlightened and realize that you're Brahman, that's really good, very laudable in one so young, but tell me one thing. This Brahman that you want to realize, is it other than this world which you want to give up? Is it somewhere else that this world is not Brahman and there is some other Brahman which you want to realize? And so starts the dialogue between Vashishta and Rama. And it's a big, big book, more than 30,000 verses. It's full of the most wonderful stories. I hope someday they make, Hollywood, they will beat the most fascinating Hollywood science fiction and fantasy movies with amazing stories of time travel, multiple universes and whatnot. Amazing stories. And
I mean, there's already a lot of inspiration from a lot of philosophies around the world, especially, of course, everyone always points out the Matrix, too, which is awesome. I still want to see the last Matrix movies, although I've heard it was kind of bad. And I know in the Matrix movie, they didn't quite go all the way with the Indian philosophy. I don't think. Because the idea that the world is false and that your true self is outside the body, in terms of Advaita Vedanta, that this is all false. This world is all false, and the only reality is the one true consciousness, Brahman, which was kind of hinted at in the Matrix in terms of the world that they live in is all false, but it didn't go back to the one true Brahman. It went back, obviously, that they're all in this pods and stuff. But again, it's just little introductions into certain philosophies that people are interested in. And, I mean, it doesn't have to be Hollywood that makes it either. Like, I mean, it's just you got to import it to the United States, and it kind of has to kind of take off a little bit, which can be kind of hard. But don't get me wrong, like, you look at anime in America, it's pretty big, and I guess we're all kids and we all like cartoon animation, but yeah, the only people I guess you'll get kind of interested in these kind of things are people who really thinks about life, I suppose, and perhaps in the West and maybe even around the world. I'm sure around the world that they just they don't have time to think about things. It's just they're busy trying to survive. And what I mean by that, just like paying the bills and stuff, finding food, as they're searching for the ground. Some are, in fact, but finding ways to pay for food. But yeah, I absolutely love movies that kind of make you think. Not all the time, but most of the time.
and in between, there are a lot of these very deep philosophical verses, philosophical insights. What the author of this small text has done is extracted the non-dualist teachings, the Advaitic teachings from that larger work and packed it into this small work. This is about just over 200 verses from those 30,000 verses. So he has left the stories aside and he has just concentrated on the non-dualism. And so we had the Yoga Vashishta Sara. Who did this? Who made the extract? Who wrote this small book from the larger one? We don't know. Some anonymous author, some scholar or monk at some period long ago. And there are Sanskrit commentaries on this, so it's not a modern work. It's a pretty medieval or ancient work. All right, that's all by the way of introduction. One more little story. I was in the mountains in Gangotri and staying in a little hut, meditating, studying, begging for my food and having the time of my life. And it's heaven for a monk. And in the next hut, there was this most amazing monk, not of our order. His name was Brahma Chaitanya. And he was this most wonderful monk. He wore white. He was a brahmachari, elderly. And I mentioned him on occasion earlier. He picture, if you have seen the movie The Lord of the Rings, Gandalf the magician, it's exactly like that. Except that Brahmachaitanya's beard was longer than Gandalf's beard.
I'm laughing because it's not Gandalf the magician. It's Gandalf the wizard. He's a I mean, don't get me wrong. They're like, I think they're roughly the same thing, but it's just kind of funny. It's like, I don't know how I could give an example. Trying to like give an example, like if we say Swami Sarvarpiyananda, instead of saying Swami, we'll say like teacher Swami Sarvarpiyananda. Well, in a sense, they're the same, but I don't know the definition of Swami, but I'm assuming there's a bit more to the word Swami than a teacher, and it's a bit different. I think. I don't know. But magicians and wizards are roughly the same, but magicians tends to be more of the practical, the real, where, they show tricks and stuff, but it's not really magical, whereas wizards tend to be more of the fantasy, where it's like literally magic. Not I'm sorry. It's just kind of weird. The magician.
And he had long locks flowing down to his waist, which he would tie up in bundles and we would hang there. So what this monk did was, there's a long story, his background and everything, but I'll just tell you what he did all day long. He was in those mountains. I went and came back. He never came back. He went there and stayed for the rest of his life. So he was there for more than 40 years before he passed. So what he did all day long was, he would sit on a wooden bench outside his cottage, and you can imagine the stunning view. Those are the true giants, all soaring 15,000, 20,000 feet, and the glaciers running down. I'd gone there in summer, so there was no snow in the valley, but you could see on the mountain tops there was snow. And there are forests all around. The Ganga, the Bhagirathi running. It's a narrow, fast stream there running down about a couple of hundred feet below where we were. And he would sit all day long and translate the Yoga Vashishta from Sanskrit to English. He was a very educated man. He was actually an engineer by training. Those who are from India, you've heard of Bits Pilani. So he was an early graduate of that institute. So his personal life is also fascinating, but I won't go into this now. So he would translate the Yoga Vashishta, the original book, which he had, I think, in 5 volumes, and he would translate into English. And he had these notebooks. He would sit, read the Sanskrit, and then translate into English, and read the Sanskrit and translate into English all day long until it was time to go for food, and I would accompany him, or until the sun began to set. And in those mountains, transition is just like that. The sun goes behind a range, and it's suddenly dark and suddenly very cold. Never as cold as this, but then there's no heating. What's outside is also inside. What's outside your cottage is also inside inside your bed, inside your blanket also. So it was quite uncomfortable and difficult. All day long he would translate this strictly non-dualist text into English. And I heard from the other monks there, this is not the first time he's doing it. He would finish the entire text and then take the bundle of little notebooks and then throw them into the Ganga, into the river, and then come back and start all over again. The point being not to publish, not to translate or publish. Point being to keep his mind in that, it's a meditative exercise.
I thought maybe to help him remember as well, and also to keep how do I say? It's kind of like training, where you go run a kilometer or a mile, and you do that every day, not because you necessarily need to do anything, but it's just to keep your body and mind in shape. It kind of sucks though you throw it all away. I mean, translating it would have, helped out a lot of people. I'm sure. It would have been nice to have read that stuff.
One more little addition. That this strictly non-dualistic monk living in the high mountains for the rest of his life, and he went there 40 years ago, and then he lived for the rest of his life there, all day long thinking about this very high abstract non-dualist theories or teachings, insights. And the evenings I would retreat into my own cottage, and he would be in the next cottage, and I would hear this faint, plaintive voice over the roar of the Ganga. He would go Narayan, Narayan, Srimad Narayan, Narayan, and going, taking the name of God, of Narayan, of the Lord. So this amazing combination of knowledge and devotion. You know? And he would go on for, I don't know, an hour or more like that. All right, now let's start what we're going to do. So I've selected just one verse from which the topic of today's talk has come. This is from the 10th verse of the 2nd chapter. This book is divided into 10 chapters, just over 200 verses. 10th verse of the 2nd chapter. It goes something like this. Swagyana darpane sphare samasta vastu jatayah imasta pratibimbanti sarasiva tatadrumaha. Beautiful verse. It means, in the vast mirror of your consciousness. Swagyana, jnana in sense of consciousness. Swa means your, the self which is consciousness. So you are the vast mirror which is consciousness. In the vast mirror of consciousness which is your real self. Samasta vastu jataya, the entire panoply of all objects, this entire material objective universe, everything that is out there, known and unknown, and your body, our bodies, and our minds. Remember, in the Vedantic or Sankhyan cosmology, it's not just a material universe. When you say universe, it's a gross, physical, material universe, also a subtle universe. Our thoughts, emotions, the mind and the universe are part of one universe. The universe has these two aspects, a physical, external aspect, and a subtle, internal aspect. And that's also the universe. That's also the universe. So all of this, all this vast universe, external, physical, internal, mental, all of it is, these are reflections in the vast mirror of consciousness, which is yourself. They are reflections in you, the vast mirror of consciousness. One more example he adds, just like the trees on the shore of a great lake reflected in the lake. Right off, two examples. One is mirror example, mirror and reflections example. The other one is trees reflected in a lake. Both are reflection examples. One is a mirror, one is a lake. Right off, one thing we need to be clear about and put out of our minds is the question, oh, so there is a world and there's a mirror and the world is reflected in the mirror. I have a face and the face is reflected in the mirror. That's okay. There is a world and we experience it in consciousness. That's plain common sense. No, that's not what is meant. You forget the external world. You forget the trees on the shore of the lake. Just take the mirror. See, they didn't have computers and TVs in those days, computer screens. Otherwise, you would have given that kind of an example. All they had was mirrors and lakes. They had mirror, actually. So mirrors and lakes. So they took just the mirror. Take the mirror and the reflection in the mirror. Forget what is being reflected there. You just put it out of your mind. Not the shore or the trees, but the trees which you see, inverted in the lake. Some of us have had that experience. We went to that retreat in Star Lake in New Jersey. And it's a very big, very calm lake, especially early in the morning. And it's surrounded by forests and low-lying hills. So if you look into the lake in the morning, you will see the trees all inverted in the clear water of the lake. You will see the sparkling blue sky. You might even see a bird flying through it. It's interesting. The action of the bird is clearly there. It's flying. You can see in the reflection in the lake. And the more still the water is, the more clearly you can see the flying of the bird. So all of that you see. I have seen a similar thing in a place called Loon Lake in Canada, in British Columbia. Very beautiful lake. Similarly, all the surrounding forests and the sky and the hills are reflected in the lake. Why go so far? Right here in Central Park, in the very eloquently, descriptively named lake, which is named the lake. So, there also, when the water is very still, you can see the Bow Bridge and the El Dorado and all of these buildings and all the trees reflected perfectly there. Just take that, the lake and what you see in the lake. Forget the surroundings. You might ask why. Because that's how an example works. Sri Ramakrishna said in Bengali, Upama ek deshi. An example is meant to prove a point. Don't stretch an example beyond what it's trying to show. Because they're using an example to show us something. It's not meant to be about lakes or mirrors or the world or trees, not like that. It's meant to be about consciousness and the universe. That's what it's supposed to, it's trying to make a point about it. So when you say, as brave as a lion, so you mean that person, though National Geographic assures us lions are not particularly brave, but it's the lionesses which do all the work actually. But anyway, as brave as a lion, you mean the person is brave. You don't mean that the person goes around on all fours and growls and pounces on you and eats you up. No, you don't mean that. You mean just one thing. So an example is meant to prove one thing, and the one thing that you need to see here is there is a mirror in which all the objects, you put it out here, you can see the streets and the building and the people and the trees and the sky, you can see everything. Turn it around, you can see your own face there. So you can see that. And there's a lake in which you can see the world reflected in that, the reflection. It just looks like that. I remember a similar example many, many years ago, which was very striking. In India, in a train, night journey in a train, and it's dark outside. So when I looked out through the window, what did I see? I saw the compartment we were sitting in, and the coach we were sitting in, and the people, and the lights, but it was just darkness outside. There was nothing else outside. There was wind rushing by. So it's just a reflection there. But you see, as if there's a world presented there. This reminds us of another beautiful hymn. Those who have studied Vedantic literature, Dakshinamurti Stotram, Shankaracharya's hymn, a hymn to Shiva facing south. So Shiva in the form of Guru who gives us insight into non-duality. So Shiva facing south, Dakshinamurti, hymn to that. And the first verse is amazing, and it has this exact same this example. It goes, Vishwam darpana drishya nagari tulyam nijantargatam pashyannatmani mayaya bahiriva udbhutam yatha nidraya yasakshat kurute prabodha samaye swatmanamevadvayam tasmai shri gurumurtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye. Very profound and moving hymn. It says, the universe is like a city seen in a mirror. The universe is like a city seen in a mirror. What's the mirror here? Consciousness. But then Shankaracharya makes that clear. Nijantargatam, within oneself. Don't think about a real city outside. It's just take the city scene in a mirror. And why I found that very evocative was, once as a kid with my parents, I still have very clear memory, we were approaching the city of Bhubaneswar, where I grew up as a kid. And we were coming from the city of Cuttack. And in those days, on the highways, there were no street lights. It's dark. And as we approached the city, we could see the city reflected in the driving mirror, the mirror of the car. I still remember an amazing evocative sight it was, just glittering lights in the distance. And as we were approaching it, and so the city was there and you could see it in the mirror. A whole city in a mirror, in a little mirror that took. The world seen in the mirror of consciousness. And then don't think about a real city outside, just the city inside. Shankaracharya makes it clear. And then in order to make it even more clear, in that verse, Shankaracharya introduces another example. We have the mirror example, we have the lake example. He introduces another very powerful example used often, a metaphor used often in Vedanta, the dream example. So he says, as you see a world in your dreams, when you fall asleep, you see a world in your dreams. Just like that, a city seen in a mirror, the universe seen in consciousness. All right, now we're going to dive into this.
Okay, I'm gonna pause it right there. I didn't really speak too much. I wish I could have, but he was telling a lot of stories. I didn't really have much to say about it. Okay, but I do wanna answer certain questions that or not questions, but statements that was commented. So one of the comments was, "Oh, the video's over with, by the way." So there's gonna be certain um, comments that I kind of want to address. One person said, "Robot or anything is not consciousness. Actually, it is a sense. In its essence, it is consciousness, like monsters in your dream is not you, but its essence is you because the monster is outcome of your mind." But the thing is, though, is that so the robot or anything is in fact consciousness. Now, whether that the how do I how do I how this is an interesting way to try to explain it, or a difficult way, I guess, because I don't quite understand it, I suppose, in this particular part. So we are clearly aware that we are conscious. A rock is consciousness, but isn't aware that it is conscious. I don't think a rock will ever be aware that it's conscious, but we are both consciousness. Why are we aware that we're conscious but not a rock? And I'm sure the answer a lot of people say is probably because of our brain. We're able to think about things. So this ability to think about things is what makes us aware that we are conscious. And I think that's one simple way of saying it. But it's kind of strange that that somehow we are aware just because of the brain. I don't know. I'm not phrasing it correctly, but I'm trying my best here. And a robot and our brain, we can. I do believe either now or sometime in the future that we are able to replicate our brain. The computers that we have right now are essentially able to replicate our brain. And what I mean by that is that obviously our brain is like a CPU. It's like a CPU. It's like a hard drive. It's like a RAM. It's like what else? Like inputs and outputs, because obviously our in order to remember stuff, we have to have some inputs and outputs. Inputs, of course, mostly, but outputs to say and do things. So our brain stores memory like a hard drive. Our brain also has short-term memory like the RAM. Um, our brain computes stuff like a CPU. So our brain and the computer are very much alike. Just ours is organic, and a robot would be more of a machine, like metal and stuff. Perhaps other types of things, but all we know right now is metal. Could be made out of rock. I don't know. But and then when the only thing that how do I say outside let's remove consciousness from this. So this is just a body with no consciousness and a computer, a robot with no consciousness. Our brains are very similar. We need power, we need fuel, we need a repair. Luckily enough, as being organic, we have living organisms and DNA and whatever else that can repair our bodies. Whereas a robot could develop nanomachines to do the exact same thing, to do self repair, updates, and whatnot. I guess a robot could over the air updates, just download it from the satellites, whereas our bodies to update has to reproduce to do that. But outside of consciousness, the human body and a robot would be exactly the same, in my opinion. I mean, obviously, one's organic and one's not. Outside of that, it's it can be exactly the same. Um, Again, we get sick, and the robot can get viruses, and then our bodies fight it off, and then a robot body would have an antivirus. And that's something that will be installed and when they were created, and much like us, you get it from your mother, or you develop it over time as well. And that's again something that a robot can do. Is a software that would learn how to create an antivirus. Again, AI stuff, which is that's the main thing that the robots are lacking at the moment. Now, you throw in consciousness into this, it's in my opinion the same because again, the outside you can I think you can have a bot. Well, I know I'm not saying this correctly because obviously there's nothing outside of consciousness, so therefore the human body and the robot body would be consciousness as well. But I'm trying to answer this question in a perspective that we're not necessarily made out of consciousness. It's difficult. It's hard. I don't know how to explain that. But you get what I'm saying, though. So we are aware that we are conscious, and a robot can be as easily aware that it is also conscious. It's just a matter that our brains have AI, advanced AI, whereas when a robot develops advanced AI, perhaps it will also learn that it is also conscious. And then to do the dream things, it's like the monster in your dream, but the monster in my dream is consciousness. So it is like in our dreams, we don't necessarily control the other people. They are also conscious, even though it's my consciousness in their minds. And that's the thing I find kind of interesting is the fact that in your at least for me, I've never been able to. The world in my dream looks very real. When I interact with people, when I do things, they act like normal human beings. But I have only ever controlled myself. Now, I have had at one point be in a different body, a body that's not my own, like a different person's body in there. At rare occasions, maybe three dreams where I'm not in my body, but I'm in someone else's body. Like when I look down, it's like this is not me. What am I? What's going on? Very few, like three at most. Three dreams I've had that, and I don't know what that means. I assume nothing really because it's just it's a dream. Anything can happen in a dream, I suppose. So I don't know if that has any kind of meaning or anything, but again, I guess it goes back to the fact that in your dream is consciousness. So everything in your dream is consciousness. So whether it has a human body, robot body, monster body, a rock, it is conscious. It is conscious. So hopefully I answered the question correctly and I stated it correctly. It's a bit difficult to how to say state it because obviously there's two ways to think of consciousness that the world itself is consciousness, we are consciousness, and there's nothing else. And then there's the duality state where we are the physical, we have this physical body that's not consciousness, and then we have a consciousness in our mind. So I'm going between those two, which is pretty bad. Whenever I state it, I need to make sure that I state it in a way that it doesn't dive between the two because that could be confusing. Let's see, I think there's another one too. Um, Not that one. Let's see. May have. Probably don't have it. Oh yeah, the other question was when I was talking about the baby being born, and the baby being born, and the consciousness is like put into the baby. Again, there goes the part where I go between consciousness as this thing that is not the world but in our mind to to also understanding that there's nothing outside of consciousness. And the point I was trying to make there, even though I never thought about it that way, but I was thinking that way. So good catch on that one. Is that it's the point I'm trying to make, I suppose, is the fact that when we say people are liberated, it doesn't make much sense because, like, let's say, for example, me. Let's say I become enlightened, right? then I will not be reborn in this world. Well, who am I? I am the consciousness. What is this consciousness? There's just only one consciousness, and that's it. So the consciousness is me, that's in me, that's in you, that's in the robot, that's in the rock, that's in the whatever. Not in, but again, see, there goes that kind of difficulty of saying or explaining this consciousness. But anyways, that essentially is this consciousness that is all of us, which is only one of us, which is only one consciousness, is when a child is born. How do I explain this? By when consciousness creates this child, I don't know what the right phrasing. So that's the reason why I went to that kind of, this body and consciousness is separate, because it's easier to explain it that way. So how do you, like, how is it that I say that the consciousness manifested this child, even though, and obviously in order to have the child, we understand that the, what the the boom boom has to happen. but but I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. It's kind of difficult to say whenever a child is born, and the whole point I'm trying to make is the fact that this liberated consciousness or being is not free, because it always has been free, but it's still always reborn. So that's kind of like you could almost say that's a bit contradictory, because if it's free, then it would never be reborn, but it's in a sense always reborn. So I'm going based on the duality. I don't know if the right word is duality, but I'm going based off the Eastern philosophy of rebirth. That, whenever we die, if we're not liberated, or we haven't been obtained enlightenment, that we are reborn back in this world. So that's the reason why I went to the duality, where when the child is born, the consciousness is put back into it. So I hope you understand why I went to that. I go back and forth a little bit, because it's a little bit easier to explain in terms of, let's just say that that when someone is born, consciousness is put into them. I don't know how to describe it. It's probably confusing, but I'm trying my best to explain it, because there's the two ways that you have to look at it. That this world is real, that the consciousness in our minds is our true selves. So there's this, in a sense, I guess you could call it a duality, as in the consciousness and then the world, which is Maya. And then you look at the reality, which there is no Maya, but there's just one consciousness. But it's hard to explain a child being born when there's nothing else other than consciousness. Unless there is. If there is, let me know, because I struggle myself. But again, so to go back to the original thing, where the child is I think the comment, or not the comment, the email got deleted. Hold on, let me see if I can find it. Oh, this is very professional. Hold on. uh, Very, very professional. Oh, here it is. Consciousness is not born inside the child. Child is born inside the consciousness. Thus, the world appears inside the consciousness. Consciousness is nirgun, in which everything is just an appearance of itself. Yes, yes. Okay, there we go. That makes. But again, to try to explain it in such a way that where rebirth happens. So rebirth is going to be kind of like where the child is born inside it. It's just not born inside. Like the duality or reborn almost seems like consciousness is born inside the child, because in order for you to be reborn into this world, there has to be this you pocket of consciousness that gets put back into a child, which is a separate consciousness from the rest of us, because otherwise, you know, there's no way to determine what's your consciousness versus someone else's consciousness. And mind you, this is a duality. I'll call it duality. And what I mean by that is that the fact that I believe I have my own consciousness. You have your own consciousness. Swami Sarvapriyananda here has his own consciousness. Where if I were to die, I still have all my accumulations of my karma, which will be put back into another body, where I'd be like, oh, this is me suffering for my past life. So I have to acknowledge that there's this bundle of karma and this consciousness that was attached to this karma that's being put back into the baby. But the reality is, this karma is an illusion. This reborn is an illusion as well, because we are not being reborn. Well, we are being reborn in a sense, but it's not individually us. It's the one consciousness being put back into the Maya, into being reborn in a sense. Again, into the illusion, into the Maya, yeah, into the Maya. That is very difficult to say without having to really think about what I have to say. But I don't want to. I don't dwell on it too long. I'm hopefully just trying to make the point, and hopefully you understand the point. If not, hey, don't be afraid to ask. Hopefully I'll see it. If I don't be afraid to ask again, or 50 more times. I don't know when I'll see it. But if I do see it, I'll try to better answer it. And I'll think about it really, really hard to phrase it in a way that it's not too confusing. So I hope that makes sense. Consciousness is not born inside a child. A child is born inside a consciousness, exactly. And the fact that this consciousness, that's the child that's being born inside this consciousness has the same consciousness as an enlightened being, and has the same consciousness as a person who is not enlightened and being reborn into this world. And the karma that's accumulated by this one consciousness, if you look at it in terms of the karma is real, it's everyone's karma. Or it's the one consciousness karma that we all have that's accumulated for all of us. It can't distinguish between the different people because there's only one consciousness and it's in all of us. I forgot what the other way was. I was going to say the other way, which is the fact that another way, which is there is no karma. There's no good or bad karma. Anyways, hopefully I didn't confuse the crap out of everyone. I mean, if I did, well, it's pretty hard without thinking about it too deeply, which I should have, but I understand what I meant, and I hope that I clarified it. And if not, you can ask again, and I'll try to do better. I'll think about it as best I can, but it's kind of hard. I'm sure it's hard, but I'm sure I could probably nail it if I really try. But I do understand my point, and I guess the most important thing is hopefully you understand where I'm coming from, and don't be afraid to ask questions. But I can't promise I'll get to them. I've been very terrible about it, but I do see the questions sometimes when I get the emails. Again, I get a lot of comments, and a lot of them doesn't get sent through, but I try my best to. Anyways, that's it for this video. That's it for right now. That's part 1. If you like my content, please consider subscribing. Thumbs up the sound down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next vid.